Execute SQL Task. First task of control flow task series that we will talk about is Execute SQL Task. Execute SQL Task provide ability to run SQL statement against a database. This database can be SQL Server database, Oracle database, DB2, or any other databases that you might imagine. The only thing that you need to have is a connection provider to that database. For some of for some of databases like DB2, Oracle, SQL Server, there are some built-in data connections, connection providers that you can use them. But for others, you can download their connection providers in their own websites and then use those connection providers in Execute SQL Task. Execute SQL Task can run SQL statement without input parameters or with input parameters. It can have an output result returns or nothing returns. So there are 4 combinations that you can have in your SQL statements. Something that have input a parameter or not, or return something or doesn't return. In Execute SQL Task, you can have different statements, DDL statements or DML statements. Working with DDL statements is a bit different. You need to have dynamic SQL. You need to use actually dynamic SQL. You need to create your SQL statement dynamically with help of expressions and then run it with Execute SQL Task. I will talk about that in dynamic SSIS features video. The only limitation for Execute SQL Task is the user who runs the package. If the user doesn't have permission to update, permission to alter anything, so you cannot do update or alter an underlying database. If user doesn't have permission to query, you cannot query database. So these are all related to the user who runs SSIS packages. When you create the SSIS package, you will run this package, for example, in the midnight as a SQL Server agent job. So I will show you how to run this package under a specific user account. So let's show you some sample Execute SQL tasks. First, an static insert statement. I create a new SSIS project. I choose integration services and I will set path for that. And I will name this as control flow execute SQL task. Okay, first package generated. This is our design area as I typed in previous video. I go to SSIS toolbox over there and drag and drop execute SQL task to our control flow. You will see a red button here, a red icon here. This shows that this task is not configured. This doesn't have a connection manager, so this task should actually have a connection manager. We can create connection managers from this task. We can create connection manager from here, but these connection managers will be specific to this package. If I go to Solution Explorer and right click on Connection Managers folder here and say New Connection Manager, then I will create connection managers under project and all other packages can use that connection manager. So I will go from here. I create new connection manager. I choose OLEDB because we want to work with SQL Server. As you can see, there are all other connection managers here. We will talk about most of them. Okay, I can use some existing data connections here, but I prefer to create a new one. First of all, in connection manager editor page, I can choose data provider. There are different data providers: OLEDB for Oracle, OLEDB for analysis services, Microsoft Jet Engine, which is for access databases, Microsoft Directory Services, which we can use for query Active Directory. But for SQL Server, it's better to use SQL Server native client, which is which has the best performance than others for SQL Server. So I use this one, and I enter server name. I use my local instance. If you need to enter SQL Server authentication, you can enter that one here, but I use Windows authentication for this video. And then I choose database name, which is our sample database in these video series. Then I test connection. So test connection is fine. There are some other options for each connection manager. For example, you can set connection time mode or something like that. If you go to all tab, then you see some connect time mode or any other extended option that you want to set. For this sample, we do not need to do any extra thing. So I hit OK. Hit OK again. So I created the connection manager, and as you can see, let me just change name of this connection manager to just sample DB. Okay, as you can see, under connection manager, sample DB created, and here in connection manager pane of this package, you will see the sample DB here, which has the project prefix, and this shows that this connection manager is in project. Okay, now we go to execute SQL task. Right before that, I'll show you what I want to do. Here is our sample database. We have sample employee table as we created in the first video, and in this sample employee table we have some records. Now we want to insert another record into this table with the SQL statement from SSIS package. So I go to SSIS package, double click on execute SQL task. I can name this execute SQL Server task and set a description for that. I'll name this to insert employee and insert a new employee. We can set timeout, code page, or any other option. I will talk about options after this sample. And we can choose connection type. As you see, there are different connection types that we can use. We can use Excel connection types, OLEDB, ODBC, ADO, ADO.NET, or SQL Mobile. Execute SQL task will work with all of these types of connections. This is very powerful task that we can use for all of these kind of databases. So in connections, we can create a new connection, or we can use our existing connection, which is sample DB. I use that one. We can set SQL source type, which can be direct input, file connection, or variable. With direct input, we can write our SQL statement in the SQL statement property. I write the insert command here, insert into DBO employee, first name, comma, last name, and values, Reza as first name and Rad as the last name. Okay, this is our insert statement. We do not want to return anything. This is just a simple insert statement. I click OK, and This is fine. I will talk about other tabs and other options here in next samples. Then I hit OK. As you can see, the red icon doesn't appear anymore because we set the connection manager, and this task look fine in terms of validation. So I save this one, I rename the package to Execute SQL Task, or simply SQL insert. Now I can run this package with hitting this button here, or pressing F5, or right click on the package and say execute package. When I execute package, you see that SSTT will go to debug mode, and you will see that this task runs fine, and this green icon show that this was fine and executed successfully. You can also go to progress tab and see some details about when validation started, when finished, and elapsed time for this task, and any other related stuff. Now I go to my database table and refresh it, and you can see that this record inserted here. And yeah, this is a very simple sample of SQL statement in Execute SQL Task, which doesn't have any input parameters or output parameters. And in next samples I will show you how to use input and output parameters. Next sample of Execute SQL Task, we will work with some input parameters. When we talk about input parameters, we need to actually set values of these parameters somewhere. I'll create another package and name this as SQL insert with input parameters. Okay, first of all, I'll go to create some variables for that. I right click here to go to variables pane, and as you can see, we can see variables pane here. I hit on add button, and I create a variable. I name this as first name. The scope of this variable, as you see, is the package. This is the name of package. Data type, I'll change the data type to string. As you can see, we have some very basic data types here: boolean, byte, character, double, integer, string, object. I will talk about object later. I choose string and value. This is the default value. I put Reza here. And another variable, last name. I choose string here again. Okay, these are first name and last name variables. I drag and drop and execute SQL task here again, and set the connection to sample DB, and write SQL statement here, which is actually insert into, let's remove previous record. Okay, insert into DBO employee, first name, comma, last name, and values. Now here is the location that we want to use these variables. Using input variables in T-SQL statement needs some parameter marker. A parameter marker is a character or set of characters that we use instead of an input parameter. For example, and this parameter markers are very dependent on the connection type. When we use OLEDB connection type, or parameter markers is question mark. So I use question mark, comma, question mark. This means that parameter marker first and the second. And I close this. So this means that these values coming from some input parameters. I hit OK. Now we should map these variables in the package to these parameter marker. We need to go to parameter mapping tab for doing that and hit add. Here I use the variable. I can use also system variables. As you can see, we have some sort of system variables, for example, creator name of package, creation name, for example, version GUID of this package, username, who run this package. Okay, I use the variable name first name, as you can see, or uncreated variables are starting with the user prefix, but system variable starting with system prefix. So I choose user first name, and direction of this variable, this is an input variable. We can have input output variables. This is an input variable. Data type of this variable is varchar. This is the data type of underlying database. So I use varchar. And we need to set a parameter name. The parameter name is actually the name of this parameter mapped to our parameter markers. In OLEDB connections, parameters names are index starts by 0. So for the first one, I choose 0. And the parameter size, this string can be around 50 characters, but if I leave this, this will use its own default size, which will be fine, I think. And I hit add again for the next variable, which is last name, input, and data type is varchar again. Parameter name for this one will be 1. This is the second question mark in that SQL statement, and I leave parameter size again. So the first one, which parameter name is 0, is first name, and the second one is 1. Now I hit OK and save this package and execute this package to see how it works. For showing this is a bit different, I change this a bit, for example, like this. And I execute this. Okay, we faced an error, and that error is because we have a syntax issue here. When you face an error, you can simply go to progress tab and see what is the error message here. What is the error message here? You can see that there is a syntax error near value. So I go back, stop package, double click here again. It should be values. I missed S. I hit OK again and execute package. So this executed fine. Now I go to this table, and you see that our changes made from variables. So if we change this variable's value, this will enter something else. Okay, this is a sample of using input variables. You can these variables actually use some static values here, but you can load this values into these variables with another task. For example, if you have other tasks before this task, you can load them with values over there and then use those variables as an input of this task. The main important parts are parameter marker, which is question mark for OLEDB connection, and in parameter mapping tab we should add a parameter mapping line for each variable and set parameter name, which is index 0 based for OLEDB connection as well. I will talk about other connection managers in the future. So this was a sample of how to insert a statement with input parameters. Now we can talk about how to insert a statement and return some result. We might want to return a result of a result from our query. For example, we want to get this ID. Let me just remove this again. We want to, when insert the record, we want to get the ID for using somewhere. So I go here, create a new SSIS package, rename that one to SQL return single value. I copy the first execute SQL task into our new package, and I changed this to insert employee into employee values, and after that select @, identity. As ID. Now I want to set, return this ID, read this ID into a package variable. So I create a variable, I name this as ID and data type int, value 0 is fine. So I go here again. When SQL statement returns something like this, when we have a select statement that return a single value, we can go here to result set tab and say that we have a single row result. As you remember, for the first samples we just had none as a result set, but for this one we use single row. And then we go to result set tab and create a row here. We say that our result name is, the result name is actually name of column that returns, which is ID. And this will be filled into the user, the ID actually variable, which is an or user defined variable. So everything is fine, just I need to see the value of this ID variable. I put a breakpoint. We can put a breakpoint here. This is very handy development stuff. I right click on this task and edit breakpoints. I can put a breakpoint on post execute event. And now when I run this package, this will insert the value, as you can see. And here, if I go to locals window, I will see variables, and under variables This is the ID variable, and you can see the value of this variable is 7. 7 is the ID that returned by that SQL statement. So there we go. So as you can see, we just select information. We need to put alias name here. This is very important because we should use that alias name in the result set tab here as a result name, and we map this to a variable name. If we had more than one columns returned, we list them one by one here. And we need also to go to result set property and set this to single row. Remember that this method is just working when we have just single row returned from that query. I will talk about when I will show you how to do when you want to load a result set more than returns more than one record. Okay, this was a sample, and a sample of running a SQL statement that returns more than one row. I can show you how to do that, but this actually is a multi-part solution. We can use that result set, and I can show that result set to you in future videos, but in this video I just show you how to load a multi-row data stream into package variables. I renamed this to SQL return multiple row. I use another execute SQL task. I choose same connection, and I write a query, select star from DBO employee. As you can see, select star will return everything here. Let's just remove these two records. We'll select everything here. So we need to load all of these information into package variable. In this case, we use a result set named full result set. This will bring whole result set into a variable, and in this case we need a variable. Let me name this as employee data. And we need to set data type of this variable to object. This is very important because object is the data type that can store multiple records, and this will actually store data like a data set. Now I go to execute SQL task, I check result set to be full result set, and in the result set tab I add a new record. I choose variable name here, and the result name should be 0. This is very important when we want to load all results set, into an object type variable. We set the result name to 0. Now when I run this package, I will see that the employee data will be filled. I put breakpoint on post execute. Okay, now you can go to locales window here, variables, and take a look at what was our variable name. It was I forgot it. Okay. Here it's employee data, which contains com objects, as you can see, we cannot see the exact records in this variable, but this variable actually contains those records, and I will show you how to read those values within a for each loop container in the containers video. The bypass prepare option is only available in OLEDB connection type, and this means that if you set this option to true, this means that the execution plan for this SQL statement will be prepared with SQL prepare and SQL execute SQL prepare function, and then this will reduce overhead of running some creating execution plan for this SQL statement before executing this. So this is good to set bypass prepare to true for those OLEDB connection type that you can. So for execute SQL task, you need to consider something. First of all, and the most important one, is the connection managers have different signatures for parameters. This is very important. For example, if you use ADO.NET connection managers, you will have different kind of parameters marker and different parameters name. I will show you a table of that. You need to consider when you work with DDL statement, you need to create your statement dynamically with some kind of expression. I will talk about this in future videos. You need to be careful about the permission of user. The user who run the package should have enough permission to do that SQL statement. And some commands need some specific privilege, specific database administration privilege or something like that. For example, if you use open row set, you might need some specific privilege. You can write your T-SQL statement as underlying database accepts. For example, if you work with Oracle database, you can write commands like to_char for converting a date to character. If you work with SQL Server, you can use select top something. So the commands that you are using is based on the underlying database. And I will show you how to use dynamic T-SQL in future chapters in Execute SQL Task. Execute SQL Task is one of the most powerful tasks in SSIS and will be used in, I think, every SSIS package that you will make. So for parameters mark, as I said, different connection types have different parameters. We used OLEDB, and OLEDB use question mark as a parameter marker. If you use ODBC, Excel or ADO, you need to use same parameter marker, but if you use ADO.NET or SQL Mobile, you need to use this signature, which is @ parameter name. For example, if you have an OLEDB connection, as you can see, you can put parameter markers here as a question mark. If you use ADO.NET, you can set parameter name like this: @parameter min product ID or @parameter max product ID. These are parameters marker which you will set in your T-SQL statement in Execute SQL Task. And for parameters name, you have different signatures. If you use OLEDB as we used in our sample, you need to set parameters name as 0, 1, 2, 3. For example, for this statement, the first one is 0, the second one is 1. This will begin with 0 with OLEDB. But if you use ODBC, this will begin from 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5. If you use ADO, you need to use param1, param2. If you use ADO.NET or SQL Mobile, you need to use same @ parameter name signature here. This is very important, so be careful about the connection type that you are using and set parameter names and parameter markers. Thanks for listening. This was about execute SQL task in SSIS.